This is either the most significant event in history, or it's a most elaborate, fabricated hoax I've ever seen. It's one or the other. There's no in between with this case. Either a UFO crashed and live aliens, that's right, live aliens were walking through the town, cowering and hiding in broad daylight and captured by the Brazilian authorities. Some of them, during the capture, people that were involved died as exposure to these creatures, allegedly. And then the U.S. came in, grabbed the crash debris and the aliens and took them back to the United States. Now, that either happened, or it's the most elaborate hoax, fabricated hoax in modern history. There's no gray zone with this case. So, as someone who's investigated the phenomenon for 30 years, I myself did not believe this case back in the 90s when I heard about it, to the point where I refused to look into it.
What a fucking promo. I just watched that.
I'm now convinced. I'm talking to your audience because I'm serious as fuck right now.
Yeah, we got him on the screen right now. I'm just watching over here. I'm
just saying, like, take it from me as someone who's done this for 30 years. I didn't believe it. I would not have spent 12 years of my life on this case, on and off, gone back and forth to Brazil countless times, if I didn't believe it happened. I'm putting my credibility and reputation on the line. I get it. But I'm asking you just to suspend judgment. Don't draw any immediate conclusions, because like I did, and I dismissed it for over 10 years. Just imagine if it did happen, how significant would you consider this? And just listen to the firsthand eyewitness testimony and draw your own conclusions.
Brilliant. So I had mentioned, we had talked about this during the bathroom break a little bit ago, that this was going to be 2 podcasts now because I saw the length we were going and everything. So we're in the second podcast. So for people who haven't seen the first podcast, or, you know, because it's going to be a standalone kind of thing on its own about Moment of Contact in particularly, when did this case of the Varginha, Brazil UFO sighting that you are referring to first come onto your radar?
It was 1998.
So 2 years after the event.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was starting putting the pieces together and kind of mapping out of the blue. It could have been 99, but I think it was 98 or 99. Excuse me. And I had teamed up with a couple of people. One guy that I'd worked with in the past, Boris Zuboff, who's a technical wizard, brilliant editor, technical sound design, color correction, that kind of thing. We teamed up on a couple of things. We'd worked together. And then I brought a new guy in, this guy, Tim Coleman. And when the three of us, and Tim had some resources, I was broke as a joke. And Tim also had a journalistic background. I think he was a former BBC correspondent. Very brilliant guy, articulate, amazing. He's like, oh, mate, we got to look into this incident that happened in Brazil. And I was like, what incident are you talking about? He goes, UFO crashed. It's absolutely phenomenal, you know. And I was like, okay, a UFO crashed in Brazil? And he's like, yeah, and the aliens survived, and they were walking through the town. I went, okay, I picked the wrong partner for this case. Right, sure. Tim, yeah, we'll look into it. And, you know, literally, that's what I did. And I just like
put him out,
brushed it aside. And actually, he was pissed off that I just dismissed him in the story like that, right? There's no way a UFO could crash, the aliens survive the impact site, be walking through the town, highly populated town, get witnessed and captured.
Approximate ballpark, how many people lived there at the time? Like how big a town?
100,000 maybe? 100,000? 130,000? Yeah. It was known for coffee before this. And the whole world I'm sorry, that's just impossible. So I refused to look into it. And he was actually pissed off with me. He was like, you just dismissed me in the case. And I said, well, yeah, sure I did. You can't make that claim and not back it up. No. And so I didn't look into it. I didn't, and I did 2 UFO. I did Out of the Blue 2. Then I did I Know What I Saw. Then 2011, I've done all these UFO films. I'm going down to Brazil, And on I Know What I Saw, I was going to talk about I Know What I Saw, just my UFO background in general at a conference at a place called Peruíbe. I guess like a couple of hours south of Sao Paulo.
I'll stick that on the map in the corner.
Cool. And there's an island right off the coast of Peruíbe that you can see from the cafes at the waterfront cafes. And you see this island, and it's got this deadly snake. It's the only place on Earth that has this deadly snake. And its venom is apparently very valuable. And so these poachers would go to the island and try to poach these snakes' venom. And the snakes would drop out of trees and kill these poachers. And so that was like, we were all talking about this like island off the coast of Peruíbe. And we could see it from the cafes. And I was there with Stanton Friedman, yada, yada, yada. So, I'm there on unrelated. I get a phone call right before I leave to Sao Paulo from a guy named Jeff Zagansky, who's been very influential behind the scenes in helping me, this independent guy with no resources, just, an ambition basically of wanting to look into this whole story and all the rest of it. And I respect him tremendously. He's like almost probably a billionaire. He ran Sony and big time. Look him up, Jeff Zagansky. So I have tremendous respect for him. So I'm not going to dismiss him in front of his face or anything. But I pick up the phone and he's like, "You're going to Brazil?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, you got to look into that Varginha UFO crash case." I was like, "Fuck, not this again." And this time it's happening with Jeff Zagansky. I was like, "You mean the one where the aliens survived the crash? That one?" He's like, "Oh yeah, you got to look into it." I was like, "Sure, Jeff, I'll look into that for you." Click. Like,
I'll just go fuck myself.
Yeah, I was like, but I couldn't tell Jeff how quickly I dismissed it. I was like, "Yeah, Jeff, yeah, sure, I'll look into that for you." Click. No intention of looking into it. I was like, I don't do crazy, okay?
Sure, there's a few people listening. They might argue that.
I know.
52 DC UFOs. That's all I'm saying.
So anyway, I get there at this conference, and I meet a couple of witnesses and a couple of researchers, and Stanton Friedman was there. Stanton's like, "Oh, yeah. Like, I looked into that case." I was like, "Really?" He goes, "Well, yeah, I just happened to be in Brazil on a speaking tour when it happened, so I was caught up in it a little bit. I looked at, yes." He goes, "Wow, fire department and police department and these three girls." And
the angles
came within, 8 feet of this lot. What? Like, 3? Really? He goes, Yeah. Oh, no, yeah. I thought, okay, well, I have tremendous respect for Stanton Friedman. Stanton Friedman, physicist, a nuclear physicist, helped uncover Roswell. Come on, Stanton Friedman, one of the best. I was like, okay, well, geez, all right. And then I met some witnesses. I met some other researchers in Brazil, and I was like, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe there is something to this story.
Is this still 2011?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, 2011.
Okay.
So I was like, well, maybe there is something to this story. So I started looking into it.
But you weren't going to include it in the phenomenon.
Well, my intention was to do that because I did some filming. But as I got into the case, it started getting, there were so many levels of detail. Like I talked earlier with you guys about Socorro. How many aspects of that encounter, like the symbol?
Yeah.
So sorry, on the last podcast. I talked about Socorro, and I talked about the symbol that was on the side of the craft, and I talked about the metal shavings and all this stuff. Well, all those factors were not included in ultimately what ended up on the screen in the phenomenon, right? You only have so much time.
When did you have a moment where you're like, wait a second, I think I believe this? Like how long?
I'll tell you exactly when that moment happened. So, it was 2000, so I was suspecting something truly crazy happened. I was suspecting that. But exactly what, I don't know. But I was like, there's enough here to merit more of my time. So I went back in 2012. Then I went back in 2000, probably 13 or 14. And then I had boots on the ground. I was working with this other guy named Marco Leal, who's amazing. He's and him and a whole crew of others, and they were going back and forth, and we were constantly in contact and trying to reach additional witnesses. And I get an interview. I'm sorry if I could tell you if it was 2013 or 2014. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Probably 2013. With a general, brigadier, Air Force, Brazilian. His name is Jose Carlos Pereira.
Are you doing it with a translator? Or does he speak English?
He spoke a little English, but with a translator. But he did speak a little English. And he said, I'll give you an interview about UFOs in Brazil, but if you ask me about Varginha, this interview's terminated and I'm leaving the room. I was like, what? Yeah, you don't talk about, UFOs are real, but I'm not talking about Varginha. Not you mention it, and this interview's terminated.
Oh, did your head also think, though, potentially, oh, he thinks that one's so stupid that he's not going to waste his time with it? Or was it only like, oh, shit, he's got something to hide?
Something to hide.
Okay.
No question. So I made him that promise that I wouldn't. But I was like, well, that's weird, right? Because if it didn't happen, he would just say, oh, there's nothing to that case. Don't ask me. So anyway, at the end of the interview, Jose Carlos Pereira, I've got photographs of this interview. Right? He's in the film, too. He's in the moment of contact at the end. He's dead. That's why I'm talking about this. Because I promised him I wouldn't. I got to the point where I was almost licking this guy's boots. I mean, when I tell you that I was praying, I was like, I was doing this. I was doing this. Marco was too. Marco was translating what I was saying. I was like, please, just please. I swear on my life. There are no recording devices. I've got no audio, no cameras rolling, nothing. This is between the three of us. I'll take it to the grave, so long as you're alive. Did Varginha happen? What happened in Varginha? I'm looking him dead square in the eyes. I'm looking right into his soul.
You got some strong eyes, too.
I wanted to fucking know if that damn case happened, and I wanted to know, and I knew he knew. And I was begging and pleading. So was Marco. Marco was right there with me. Walks back to his car. I'm begging him, please, just please. He sits down in the back of his car. He's got a driver. And he sits down. He leaves the door open. Marco and I were standing right there. And he looked at us and he said, it happened. Closed the door. Whoosh, off he went. I was like.
And then he's probably laughing on the road like, those dumb motherfuckers.
No. I looked into this guy's soul, man. I'm telling you. And it was like. This guy confirmed it to me, and I knew right then and there, I was all, okay, that's pretty good proof for me.
I wouldn't want to lie to your eyes. People, I don't know if they can appreciate that on camera, but you got some ice in those veins.
I will look into someone's soul with my eyes. Yeah, I will.
I feel it. Yeah. And you're like poking around. It's kind of violating me right now. I might press charges. Stop fucking me with your soul.
Oh, my God. Well, I'm incredibly curious human being. Like when I hear about something, I want to get to the bottom of it. I want every detail. I want to be put on the scene. I want to experience it. I'm fascinated by this topic. I'm fascinated by this story in a way that, I have to remind your audience, like if it's true, these accounts are true, this could have something to do with, it's a big part of the bigger picture of the universe.
Yes,
something to do with our existence. Do they have a hand in our existence? Who knows?
It's a meaning of life question if I've ever seen one.
It's a meaning of life question. It's the bigger picture of the universe, the bigger picture of reality. Jesus, this is potentially incredibly significant. Even if we don't have all the answers, this is incredibly significant. And so when I get to a witness, I don't just believe a story. I don't believe any stories. Usually I start off by not believing the stories. There's no way.
I like that about you. You have a high threshold of skepticism and bullshit meter.
I really do, And I had some people in Australia. I was investigating a landing case with Shane Ryan did a short film on it. It's about a UFO landing that took place in 1966 at Westall Primary School. And there were 365 people standing outside in broad daylight on research.
Oh, yeah, this was in the phenomenon.
Fascinating case. Yeah. And there was a guy who was the English professor. I think he's actually finally come out. He'd been hiding for 50 years. And I remember the fellow researchers in the area when I arrived, don't even bother trying. Mr. Greenwood will never talk. It ain't going to happen. We've been trying for 50 years. I said, get me in the room with him. That's it. Just get me in the room with this guy.
Let these eyes take advantage.
Yeah. And I looked him in the eyes, sitting down at a cafe. His wife had left, thank God, because his wife's like, baby, you ain't talking about this. But I looked him dead square in the eyes. And one of the fellow researchers looked at me and he goes, what were you doing? I said, I was looking into his soul, because I want to know. Anyway, so I just one of my techniques, because it's not like it's real in the sense that I really do want to know what the truth is. I want to know what the person knows. I want to know if they're full of shit. I want to know. Biggest thing in life is to waste one's time. You don't get that back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't waste my time. Do what you say you're going to do or whatever. Follow through. You know, let's just be honest here. Let's just get. And so I looked into Jose Carlos Pereira's eyes. Very intense. I don't think I've ever taken a crowbar and pried harder than I did with him.
What year is this now?
Probably 2013.
All right, so this is, and you're in
This is the
Varginha.
highest level Brazilian Air Force official I'd ever met with.
Yeah.
I'd met with an Air Force general, sorry, an Army general. I got him on camera, and he skirted the issue a little bit with me as well. But this guy had a soul. He had a heart and a soul. And I kind of cracked it, and both Marco and I kind of cracked it just for a moment, just to get through. So anyway, at that point, I was like, all right, I'm going to look into this case further and I had some people that I'd worked with in the past, like Leslie Kane and Jacques Vallée and a number of people. They were like, I'd be careful on this one. I don't know if it seems something fishy or I don't, it's like, well, I said, I get I know how you feel. I understand. Just let me, just trust my judgment a little bit on this one. Let me roll. Don't.
And you're kind of bookmarking it because you're working on the phenomenon. You obviously are making
Yes.
the decision now where you're like, I want to do this separately. So this is going to
Yes.
be the next one.
I tried to squeeze it into the phenomenon and it just didn't happen.
Didn't work.
I tried for 8 months and I shot a bunch of times and I did it. It was too big of a story. There was too many moving parts. I just couldn't get it down to. It wasn't like a sighting. It was a whole story of a crash and there were witnesses that had disappeared for 20 plus years. I just so I kept going. And I kept going, and we kept going, and I said, Marco, excuse me, we got to find the crash witness, this guy Carlos de Souza. Where the hell is he? I don't know. He's been off the radar for 26 years, 25 years. Nobody can find him. I was like, well, we got to find him. What about this other guy? We got to find him. What about somebody involved with as a military base? We got, so we're going after all these people. And finally, we had enough contacts from over the last 11, 12 years where I was going to go one final time and shoot. And that's when Alessi, I guess Alessi saw me on Joe Rogan and he contacted me and said, hey, love to be a part of any kind of, production, whatever. And I said, and, I've heard that many times in the past, and people don't really have the follow through.
And for people that didn't see the last podcast, Alessi's in the studio with us right now.
Yeah.
If you're just listening and not watching.
Yeah. Sorry. So I said, I might do this production. No, stay in touch. And
How old were you? 21?
Yep.
Yeah. So he got back in touch, and lo and behold, there's Alessi. So I was like, okay, well, we might be doing the shoot, and then another couple of weeks, whatever. I'm going to do the shoot in Brazil for a month.
He's never going to show up.
Yeah. So then I said, I tell you what, we're going to be staying at this hotel room in Sao Paulo. If you show up, you jump in you'll be part of the crew. Can you carry cameras? Can you do? Yeah.
I'm never going to see this kid again.
He shows up in Sao Paulo, gets his ass over there, and boom, there he is. And and we shot for a solid month. And we'd had contacts that we'd been, working with and talking to, and sometimes even previously taken on camera for, like I said, the last 11, 12 years. So we had them kind of quasi lined up, and then we had a couple of potentials that were like thinking about it, like maybe. And then we had others that were like, I don't care how much money or anything you offer me, it's never going to happen. Don't even try.
How big was the crew again, like total people that you had, including Alessi?
5 or 6?
Because we had Guy,
Yeah.
Dave,
Yep.
you,
Yep. Emily.
me, and then the translators.
Pedro?
Fernanda and
Marco research. So we had
It
8.
looks like a Pedro.
7?
It's killing me.
7.
Seven.
So we had a crew of 7. Yeah.
It's a good tight crew.
Yeah, good tight crew. And then we'd found Military X. Marco found Military X. The guy that allegedly drove the creature on. Maybe I should get into the story a little bit.
Yeah,
before we
so let me reshuffle the deck here so that
go
we
for
can. Hey guys, quick note for you. As I announced last week, we are officially live with the Patreon. I'm hoping to grow this community so that I can invest back in the show and put out more episodes in the future. Right now, we are featuring exclusive content over there, as well as some preview clips and some behind the scenes with me. And pretty soon, we're also going to have a patron-only Discord, as well as some other cool things. So please check out the link in the description for the page, and I hope to see you guys over there. Thank you. We can start this from the top and organize this, because one of the best parts of the documentary was how simply you put this together, almost like 5 to 6-ish chapters that covered from each angle. I think it was like 6 total major witnesses that were covered here, ironically. So it's like 6 degrees of separation, and they were all unrelated except for maybe one of them. But let's start with Carlos Souza, which I definitely knew a coke dealer named Carlos Souza. That's really fucking with me. But this was the guy who allegedly, because you at least already mentioned that what happened here, these aliens got out, they were alive, people saw them in Virginia, and that's why he didn't believe it. But Carlos Souza was the Varginha resident who was present by this field that allegedly saw the UFO come down and crash.
Carlos Souza was a professor in Sao Paulo, which is about 5 hours to the south. And he was also an ultralight pilot. And he
was flying the bricks. He was flying the, gotcha.
Yeah, that's his cover story. No. But he was going he was going to go meet with some of his friends and go fly ultralight airplanes in a place called the state of Minas Gerais, which is also part of Varginha and as of the military base. Anyway, he's driving. It's super early in the morning. He's going to meet with these guys to go ultralight flying. And
I'll put him in the corner of the screen so people can see him.
Yeah, I think it's like 5 a.m. And he sees this cigar-shaped metallic object in the sky, not very high up in the sky above him, flying erratically, slowly. It had a huge gash in the side of it. He said it had like a white vapor, not like smoke that you'd expect from a fire, but like a white vapor coming out the backside.
How high approximately did he say it was?
I got the feeling that it was like 1,000 feet above him, maybe.
Okay,
not high. Yeah. He was like, this thing's coming down. Like he was, and he never once thought alien, not once. He was like, oh my God, what is this thing? It's like a cigar shaped. Didn't you see wings? He was like, he didn't know what it was, but it was in trouble, and he was watching it, and it was struggling to keep its altitude, and it was coming down. And then he sees it go down behind a hill, so he lost sight of it, but it was going down. Like he was like, this thing was crashing, no question. So he gets off the freeway, and he drives up a dirt road on a farm called the Myelini Farm. And it's January 13th, roughly 5 a.m. It's dawn.
1996.
Barely, 1996. He's driving up this dirt road into the direction where he saw this thing go down, and he comes upon a football field size area of metallic debris, like almost like tinfoil, and then a very large portion of the craft still intact. And again, it was like we have illustrations. I don't know if you have them. We have illustrations in the film. And what I do when I do illustrations or animations for any film project, I cut myself out of the loop. I hire an illustrator or an artist, and I put that artist directly in touch with the witness. Why would you have the witness describe to me what they saw and then me translate that to the artist? I just put the two of them directly in touch, and then they go at it. So he sees this field of debris and this large section of the craft still intact. And he described the whole thing when it was in the air about the size of a school bus, like those big school buses. He gets out of the car, and immediately he's overwhelmed with this stench of ammonia and sulfur. He said it was so intense. He grabbed his T-shirt, he pulled it up over his face, and he held it like this, and he was like, "What? What am I? This smell." This is kind of the last thing he's expecting. And he sees this like tinfoil type material, and he goes down and he grabs a piece of it, and he said it was like about this big, and he crumpled it up with his hands, and he said he didn't feel anything, like it wasn't even in his hands. It just was so light. And then he said when he let it go, it regained its shape. And he's like, what? He's just to himself, he's like, what the hell? And at which point, the opposite direction on the dirt road from where he drove in came these military trucks and Jeeps. And I think one of them maybe even an ambulance. And they came in from the opposite direction.
How soon?
Within minutes. And
But he didn't say like it was 45 seconds or something. It was
no,
just like within minutes.
Within
so
minutes. Yeah, within
quickly.
minutes. Yeah, within minutes.
Because I didn't know if like maybe, tinfoil hat on here, they were tracking it and they're like, oh, there it is, and they're already there. You know what I mean?
Undoubtedly that's what happened. But in any case, and ultimately he was at gunpoint, told to leave. He didn't see anything. He wasn't supposed to be there. What all these things. So he was like, he thought maybe it was a secret test program, and he witnessed something he shouldn't have witnessed. He was like, he left. And he was scared, and he gets a couple miles down the road, and he stops off at a gas station. I've seen the very gas station. He gets a coffee, and he's trying to calm his nerves and just process everything that just happened. And he has a coffee, and he comes out, and he sees an unmarked government-looking car, black or dark blue, like an Opel, he described it, with no license plates, pull in, and two men in suits get out. And they came up to him, and they knew his name, they knew his wife's name, they knew where he lived, they knew about his kid, his daughter, and you didn't see anything.
And
if
they
you talk
were
about
all
what
Brazil. They were all Brazilian.
My impression was that they were Brazilian, yes.
Okay.
But I didn't ask him, but that's a good question. But yes, that they definitely spoke
I'm going to call
Portuguese.
you like a cheeseburger.
I know. So they spooked him. They're like, things are going to get very weird if you talk about what you saw. Then the accounts a week later of these strange creatures is spreading like wildfire in the headlines. And these three girls that come upon in the town of Varginha, which wasn't far from where he saw this UFO, this thing crash. These reports coming out of these beings. These girls are talking about it. The three sisters, about a week later, were walking through the town, a little shortcut in the town of Varginha, Brazil. It was January 20th, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 1996. Three girls, two sisters, Liliani, Valkyria, and then Katya was a friend.
Was she older?
Katya
older?
was 21,
Yeah.
Liliani was 16, and Valkyria was 14.
Got it.
And they were coming home. It was, like I said, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were going through this like field that had a cinder block wall on one side and partly on the other side, almost like an area that looked like it was going to be constructed, but then it kind of stopped, and they had like tall grass going in the field, and they were going through there taking this shortcut.
Quick question.
Yes.
Just so I remember, what time did you say
Carlos
saw it?
The 13th. It was the morning of the 13th at around 5 a.m., 4:30.
So before the sun's
Yes,
up.
about a week earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
A week earlier.
About a week earlier, yeah. 6-7 days, yeah.
Okay, so now a week later, and you do
Yeah, it
a
would've been
brilliant
7.
job in the documentary, by the way. One of my favorite things you do is you have a lot of great drone shots and do stuff from above, but one of the features you have is you'll have the drone shot like a map, like a Google Earth almost, but it's yours, and you'll put the exact location like written out so people can see where everything is in relation. And what's crazy about the girl sighting is this is in the middle of the town.
Yeah.
It's in like what was it behind again now it's an abandoned like kind of field, but was it the same thing at the time? Like it was behind a wall?
Yeah, it was like a lot that could be potentially developed that wasn't developed. And it had like cinder block walls, almost like,
Yeah.
like one lot, and then there was another lot that was developed.
And what were they doing there?
They were just taking a shortcut going home.
Okay.
Yeah, and they said there was some graffiti on the cinder block wall, which is still there today, and that got their attention, and they were kind of looking at the graffiti, and then they see this, like, I'll remind your audience, this is broad daylight, okay? They see this thing, like, they're like, is it a statue? Like, what? It was just this thing, it was crouching down. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It was crouching down, and I don't know if I can do this without going off camera here, but it was like like this,
Yeah.
up against
Right here.
the
I got it.
wall.
I'll put that picture in the
Okay,
corner.
that's exactly right. So it's crouching down, and Liliani, who's in the front, who's 16 years old, shrieked when she realized it looked like some kind of weird creature. She makes a gasp, audible, loud, and the creature turns its head and looks them straight in the eye. Liliani grabs her younger sister, Valkyria, by the hand and hightails it out of there screaming. But they got eye contact with it from about 8 to 10 feet away. And she just, now she's like, she thinks she sees the devil. She doesn't know what the hell this thing is.
And how did they describe the eyes?
Well, I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So they hightail it out, Liliani and her sister Valkyria, and they're running, screaming and running. They get about 100 feet down the path, and they realize Katya's still there. And Liliani turns back and sees Katya frozen in her tracks, staring at this thing, just locking eyes on it. She runs back. She's like, I got to go help Katya. So she runs back, leaves her sister Katya, and runs back to leaves her sister Valkyria, runs back and grabs Katya and grabs her by the hand and yanks her out of there.
And did Katya say what she was doing during that time?
So check it out. So I was like, oh my gosh, like they all got face to face with this thing within 8 to 10 feet away, but Katya had a prolonged face to face with her. So I said to her, put me there.
Yeah. This was like your best moment of the documentary.
Put me there. During that moment of contact, in other words, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to revisit that title. I think I like it. During that moment of contact, when you locked eyes on this creature, this being, this thing, was there any level of communication? Did you feel anything? And that's when she said, help me, I'm in distress. I'm feeble, I'm weak, I'm suffering. Help me. And
did she hear a voice, or was it like a? It's a weird
because of
question
the language.
to ask,
Well,
but-
no, because of the language barrier, maybe I didn't get that level of. Because I said to her, "Did you feel any communication?" Well, there was no verbal communication. There was no vocal communication. So it was either done with images or it was done.
Because here's another thing that underscores how amazing the content you did get was.
Yeah.
This entire documentary, you're working through interpreters.
Yeah.
None of these people speak English.
Yes.
So you don't know which words corresponded with which. So their body language, you're trying to read like what draws the most emotion. It's not like you're hearing it in English and we hear someone say the word alien and we can see their face right at that instant second. And you're dealing with, 30, 60 seconds of talking, 30, 60 seconds of translating, you giving back, the same thing coming back around to them. So there's like this time in between and you're trying to cover all these details to get every possible thing filled in. So my point is even for you, there has to be some things like what I just asked that like didn't get addressed or are out there.
So one thing about me is that I have to have some level of communication. I speak fluent French and I speak a little Spanish. And like I'll give you an example. When I was going to Russia to do when I was working on Out of the Blue, I was learning Russian on the airplane. Basic expressions, yes, no, ye, ne, gavru, по-русски. Just like getting little, pashol nawi. No.
James walks off the airplane. Da.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
And I cannot stand not being able to communicate. It's like so important to me. So when I was in the field in listening to Portuguese in Brazil, I was slowing time down with my brain. I know it sounds weird, but I was focusing so hard. I was trying harder than I've ever tried. I would try to slow time down a little bit, and I would slow the words down, and then I would take the Latin root, like, oh, this sounds like the French one of this. Okay, I got a word there, terra, I got this, and I was probably catching one every 5 words maybe, slowing it down because things are going really quickly. This didn't always happen, but I wanted to understand so badly what was being said, man. You have no idea like how bad I wanted to understand.
Oh, I do. There's a lot of memeable moments of your faces during this fucking documentary.
I was just
it's incredible.
Laser-like focus. And then half the time, after a couple of weeks, I would translate the vast majority of what was just said in the field, and the translator would go, "Yeah, that's you're really like, wow, you're understanding." I was understanding more and more every day. Obviously, speaking is different. You start to understand, first, and then the speaking comes later. But in any case, yeah, that was certainly an element of difficulty, another layer that I had to deal with in the field, and no. Buddy, I would say, well, actually, no. The female interpreter was bilingual, no question about that. She was bilingual. Yeah, Marco not so much. He's pretty good, but not bilingual. Being bilingual is what it takes.
What do you mean Marco wasn't bilingual?
There's fluent and then there's bilingual. Fluent is when you can communicate primarily what you're thinking.
Right. Yeah, but he wasn't Portuguese.
He's bilingual in the sense that you could speak English just as well as you speak Portuguese. You could speak Portuguese just as well as it's seamless transition.
I thought he was from there.
He is from there, but he's not. His English isn't that great.
Oh, okay. Now I see. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
sorry.
I was looking at the other way.
Yeah, no, he's fully Brazilian. Sorry, I didn't clarify that well enough for you. So, but in any case, and when you want to know about something that bad enough, I don't know, the brain has an uncanny ability to do amazing things.
Yeah, and I had asked this a few minutes ago, but you were going through it, and I want to come back to it with the eyes because, well, who was the one? Katya was the one who was left behind?
Yes, she was 21 years old.
So she had the
prolonged contact.
And she had the potentially telepathic content here.
Yes.
Or contact here.
They all felt that it was non-threatening. It was suffering from the heat. It was suffering from exposure to the elements, and that it wanted help. None of them felt threatened by it. They were scared of the unknown.
But two of them ran. So
Totally.
They were scared of the unknown.
They thought it was the devil, but they didn't feel threatened. I said,
because they're religious.
Yeah, they're religious, highly religious. That it was the devil, and but they didn't know. They never thought this is an ET. Never.
But they all described in the picture. Once again, I'll put it in the corners from the documentary as well. They all described this figure with big red eyes,
yes.
and this in a creepy way. The same way you see the kids from Zimbabwe and the phenomenon from '94 on the John Mack tapes describing the eyes, they say like 3-4 times the size. You hear, and you've heard some of the other cases where they say 3-4 times the size. Such a similar creature. That's what these girls describe, except for once.
Yeah.
And this is what I don't know if you caught this, but we were looking at this a couple days ago, and I think it was Katya because she was the older one. She, at one point. Was it Katya or was it the other one who said slits?
It was Katya because that's the red hair.
Oh, she was talking about the mouth. Slit for a mouth.
No, she said, but did she fuck up? Because
she might have fucked up. She definitely meant mouth. No question. Because I asked about the mouth.
I have
heard.
They
said the mouth was like you could barely see it. It was like a slit.
And I have
They
heard,
all said big eyes.
I have heard people in your other cases describe the mouth as a slit.
Yes.
But she said, and then the eyes like slits with an S.
Right.
And so that was the one time where I heard a contradiction there.
Yeah, I had them all draw it out. They all drew it out. So she must have misstepped.
Okay.
Definitely because she was referring to the mouth was because I asked, did it have a mouth? They all said it was like you didn't really see. It was like a slit. Like it was not even. It was a non.
But before we get to the second layer though of the mom coming, because that was when it got really compelling, and I want to go there. Just to recount here, you had said this was a week after Carlos Souza allegedly saw
January 20th.
So you talked about it. He was visited and everything, but after he gets the visits like that day and the day after, is he just chilling for a week and there's no creature sightings reported yet?
He never thinks alien. He never thought UFO alien. Never. He thought he witnessed a government super secret craft. He didn't see any aliens. He didn't think alien. But then when he heard about the beings that the girls described, he was like, holy shit, that must have been connected to the UFO I saw crash, that thing I saw. So he gets in touch with a guy named Claudio Covo, who's a very well-respected Brazilian UFO researcher. He's also an engineer, architect. And he gives one on-camera statement in 1996. Excuse me, right after it happened.
Late January.
Yeah, right around there. Right after this whole thing happened, he got in touch. There were other truck drivers that come forward as well that were on camera, but I couldn't get my hands on that footage. But in any case, his daughter, Cynthia Covo, was present during the interview 26 years ago with Carlos de Souza and her father, Claudio Covo. And he does one on-camera statement, and then he vanishes for 26 years. I, with the help of Marco, obviously, get in touch. Claudio Covo has since deceased. His daughter has all the archives, including the original drawings, the taped interview with Carlos de Souza, whatever else he had, photographs and things of that nature. She shares it all with us. And she says, I'm now a psychologist. I met Carlos right after he saw that, within weeks. He met with my father. He was trembling and scared. He was smoking cigarette after cigarette after cigarette. And she's like, there's no question in my... This is before I met Carlos de Souza. I'd seen one horribly shot, grainy-ass, terribly broken up VHS, whatever. We managed to get the original taped interview from Claudio Covo, thank God. And she said, I'm a psychologist now. No question this guy's telling the truth. Marco had found him, persuaded him over about a year period to come forward. He did. He met with us. And then I said, I want to take him out to the site for the first time in 26 years.
And let's show that real quick, because this is something, you even had a preview of it in the trailer that when you first put it out a couple months before the documentary. But when we talk about all these instances on the last podcast, when we talked about them, and when we talk about this in general, and like, do people really believe, or are they bullshitting? And there's always some who are bullshitting, but like, this guy believes what he saw. Because this was like, I'm just gonna let the clip play so people can see this.
It took a long time to find the spot.
All right,
I was actually on the verge of wanting to give up. I wasn't going to give up, but I was like, ugh.
That is some fucking unbelievable footage right there. I mean, if as a viewer who's not there, if you can't feel that, I can't really help you. I mean, that's like...
Dave West is a seasoned director of photography. He's worked with National Geographic. He's worked with presidents in the White House. He's all... That was one of the top 3 moments of... He goes, if that guy is lying, he deserves... You don't need Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio anymore.
Greatest actor of all time.
Yeah, this guy's... Yeah.
I mean, the way he just kept saying, Akio, Akio, Akio. Like, you can see his brain, like, processing, like, like someone who has to go back to...
Very
like
intense.
Like someone who's suffering from PTSD has to go back to the place where their buddy died or something like that. It's the same.
That was when I was talking to you earlier about Travis Walton firing this guy in 1975, Snowflake, Arizona. Mm-hmm. And when we went back to the site after years, he'd been there. And we did some, it's a whole other story, but we cut trees, direct proximity to the UFO, and that was one of the reasons why we took Travis. But I saw that same reaction where their eyes are open, and yet you could see, you could almost pass your hand in front of them, that they had a film strip in their mind. They were reliving that scene. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could just see it. Like they're somewhere else. It's pretty intense.
And it just, for someone who had looked at this case originally and thought that this might be bullshit, and then to kind of get yourself to a spot 13 years later to hear about it again and be like, all right, I'll look at it. And then you spend 2-3 years really looking, and you're like, oh my God. Then you have that moment where the guy's like, it happened, and you're like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. And then you're trying to finish this whole phenomenon. You get that done, and now you're like, all right, I'm going down to do it. You don't know that you're going to get that. When people go to make these documentaries, like, think about what's a good all-timer, like the documentary Inside Job from 2009 about the financial crisis.
You ain't going to get it if you don't try.
Well, sure, but I'm saying, like, those guys, they knew how the movie ended.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
You don't know.
No.
You might go down there and you might not get what you need. And you're
Crash
like,
and burn.
We can't do it.
Easily could have crashed and burned.
But you got it.
Yeah. And military X. Well, so
we'll get there.
Because I'll tell you how close we came to not getting that one.
So but let's stay with these two, because now I think we have so well covered here. Yep. We talked about the 3 daughters. The second layer to that I had mentioned was the mother, who then you have come by. So she was the mother of 2 of them, right?
Liliani and Valkyria.
Okay, so the 2 younger ones.
Yes.
So she describes her 2 daughters
and Katya showing up at the house screaming.
So after they had gone back and gotten Katya, they come back and they're
screaming,
horrified. And she says, saw the devil. Take me there.
Yes.
And then what happens?
Liliani and Valkyria, who's 14 and 16, said there's no way we're going back. So then she grabs Katya, who's 21, and she's begging and pleading, Katya, Katya says, I don't want to go. And she finally talks her into it. So she leaves Valkyria and Liliani, who refuse to go back. And she goes, jumps in their truck, and they drive a few blocks away and get to the location. At which point, the mother describes this smell like ammonia and sulfur, the same smell that Carlos de Souza describes.
Everyone describes this.
Powerful.
Yeah.
They said if you've ever smelled a skunk at close range, multiply that by 1,000. It's almost paralyzing. That's what they all said. And it's stuck in your nasal cavity, sometimes for days or even weeks. And she said she put rubbing alcohol. I think she was doing like vinegar and rubbing, just trying to get it, out of there. And so she's met with that. The creature's gone, but there's a footprint exactly where the girl said it was in the sand. And then she draws the footprint for us, which a lot of the witnesses described this. So if the foot, and these things were bipedal, let's just say it was like that, and it had this other digit on the side. So when it's standing up, that stabilizes it. Because if you got two, you're not going to walk very well, but it's got this other digit on the side, apparently, and that would be the imprint in the sand would have been. That's what everyone is. Sorry.
Do that. I want you to do that for the camera, clearly. Do that with your thumb again.
Yeah.
So people can see exactly what it is.
Like another digit coming out the side to sort of stabilize it for walking.
Which would say it's 3.
Yeah.
Because I love this. You're going to a major question I had about this film, because like you were saying with the smell, it's amazing when you hear all these different people, and in other cases, by the way, talk about sulfur, ammonia, like this, they can't get it out for days and shit like that. Everyone's describing it the same. A lot of people are describing the eyes the same. A lot of people are describing the size the same. It's childlike or whatever.
Big head, spindly arms, feeble,
So with this one, where you have the foot, we're going to get to Military X. I don't want to give the full context there yet. People will get that later. But there's another great witness, this guy Military X, that you have later in the documentary.
Yes.
Who very specifically, as you point out, when he goes to describe the foot, very clearly says 2 digits. Yeah. But he's doing, as you just did, he's doing this with his thumb. And I watched you in the hotel room mirroring his thumb and doing this as well. And you didn't say anything, but he was specific. You had the camera dead on his hand. And I'm going, he's saying 2, but it's really 3. And I think in his mind, he's thinking those are toes and this is something else.
Like an appendage. I mean, it's almost like a little side. If you look at it, I think like a chicken, doesn't a chicken have that? Like it has a little appendage that comes out on the side.
So the mother describes 3.
Yes.
But I'm going to play the scene right now because you have the mom draw it. And she drew this fucking thing so quickly and matter-of-factly. I mean, it's like, holy shit, Did you do like 10 takes with her for that?
No. And you know what?
I had to ask him.
Nothing in this film was staged. This all happened as it happened. In fact, I remember the DP, Dave, saying, slow down, I can't keep up. I was like, look, the things are happening. I'm not going to recreate, you got to just capture it as it happens.
All right, so this is the part where you do this. Let's play it at 45:12 in the documentary.
Do they?
She's saying, please go with me. Then I got in the truck and we parked the truck here. I'll translate. And now the mom's talking. Then we saw the creature and we saw the creature's footprint. I'll never forget it. By this sun, I'll never forget it. Only 3 fingertips. Huge. And the last one's big. Is she describing the appendage similarly? Or was that a slip of a shitty artist where she draws it big? And now she's talking about the smell, so I'll cut it there. We already talked about that. But is she, that's what I wanted to know, because she drew it naturally, and it's like, I'm a shitty artist too. I'd have done the same thing where you can't draw everything in perfect, like, symmetry. Or was that literally like she was drawing it similarly to what he said, where one's smaller?
So think of it this way. It's bipedal. We know that, right?
Right.
How hard would it be to walk on this as opposed to this? You have a side appendage coming out like this.
Exactly.
That's what's his name? So that's what we've all speculated. We don't have a photograph of the foot, so we can't say for sure. But according to the eyewitness testimony, that makes the most sense. And that's what's his name? Is almost like 2. He said almost like 2 appendages.
But he's doing this.
Yeah, he's doing that.
Yeah.
Do that. So
we'll get to him to give all the context. But okay, that does, for me, that clears that up, because it was really compelling. Like how just boom, 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 boom she was with that. And you were standing right there for this, right?
Yeah.
Every time.
Now, how much, and I'll ask you this to the side, Alessi, because we got the director over here. Let's remove the bias. How much of, when you saw the final cuts of this, obviously you guys are filming, I mean, maybe even close to 100 hours, whatever it was, over this month here.
Easily, yeah.
When you saw the final cut of this, was this how you saw it happen live? Was it very representative of that?
Yeah, identical. It's one of those things. It was one of those things where when you were in person, I always say this, is just like, yes, the documentary does such a good job, but when you're in person, it's just riveting. You're just like, oh my God. Like, they're actually drawing to this, and I'm like, what the heck? And these people, day to day, are just normal people. And it's like, if they're all actors or all paid Oscar winners, whatever, they are phenomenally doing a great job in day-to-day life doing this.
And they're not tracking us down. We're tracking them down and begging them to come forward.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. So that was, so she says that, and then she goes through what we talked about with that, with the smell, and she couldn't get it out. And I guess it sounds like she pretty much concluded right away, yo, you didn't see the devil. He's awesome. You know, this is some
well,
other
that's the
world
thing
shit.
is that so the I think that's why Carlos de Souza felt compelled to come forward and share his aspect of the incident, because he was like, holy shit, maybe those girls, what they saw was connected to what I saw. Maybe the reason why those men in suits came up and they were so adamantly scaring me not to ever talk about this, and I was at gunpoint, maybe that was otherworldly what I saw. And that's why the excessive secrecy, and that's why the life threats, and that's why the men in the black suits, and that's what the girls saw. The creature's got to be connected. He felt compelled to give his testimony one time. And that's when he met with Claudio Covo, and did that one, So I was like, I told Marco, I was like, I know this guy's been gone for a quarter of a century, but his testimony is mandatory. Like, we don't have a film, we don't find this guy. And so we do have the two farmers, Eurico and Oralina de Fretas.
The White House? Were they living in the White House?
They got woken up by their cows at night, cows and I think horses, stampeding around like 2 a.m, and they saw a cigar-shaped thing with a gash.
Oh,
in the side.
right. Yeah.
So, but Carlos saw this thing hit the ground and came to the crash site.
Now, can you? I forgot to go ahead.
Sorry, one thing. I don't know why I didn't overrule how I got talked out of this. We went in 2013 and found the farm hand at the Maiolini farm. And he talked about the neighbors hearing the boom, the impact of the boom. And he talked about the owner of the farm confirming to him that the neighbors all heard this thing crash. It made a boom when it hit.
Whoa.
Yeah. And we have him on camera. He didn't want to be filmed, but I had the cameras rolling, and I have it. And I think maybe that's why they talked to me out of using it. But I have the farmhand at Maiolini Farm in 2013 describing that the owner of the farm had heard from the neighbors that they all heard it, a big boom in January 1996.
Now, can you?
I should release that. I should put that out there.
You should.
Yeah.
I think you should put all this out there.
Yeah,
I
I know.
would watch the shit out of it. I know a lot of people. It'll make you a lot of money. It'll get you a fucking extra house. Anyway, but did you, when he's pointing to this and going, key, I'm the farthest thing from a scientist, so I don't even know how some of the sediment would work here, but I do hear all the time about people who are digging up and testing stuff from thousands of years ago and shit because stuff stays in the soil. I gotta think something did, unless there was a full-blown thing where the government went in and uprooted the whole earth. Like, is there any way to test that ground right there for certain material?
So I got contacted by a number of geologists since this film's come out. I was wondering if you can scroll to the crash site. There's an overhead shot. This is rarely ever talked about.
Souza's crash site.
I've had one person out of all the people that have seen the movie bring this up to me. Everybody else misses it. I picked it up, not in the field so much that day, maybe a little bit, but when I saw the overhead drone shot of the alleged impact crash site, the landscape and earth looked different than everything immediately around it. And so I was like, let's see if you can see it. It's the drone shot.
Was it during
overhead.
when he was crying?
After the crying.
It was after the crying.
Yeah,
okay, so the crying ends right there.
So it just, you'll see. Oh, there we go. Okay. Can you blow that up?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I want your audience, to take a look at the landscape, and I want you to see.
Let me go back 10 seconds.
There's the
Okay.
illustration of the craft.
So that's the illustration of what it looked like upon crash.
Yeah, cigar shaped.
That's a hell of an illustration.
There was that White House, and it was hidden by that bank of trees. That's why he didn't see that White House.
Right.
All right.
Okay, now
if you
tell me
look at
when
the
to
landscape,
pause.
I'll tell you when. All right, go ahead and pause right there,
Where it
and then
says.
and then let it take your cursor off the screen so it goes back to take. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, they'll see it
All
clear.
right, here we go. So look at all this, and look at.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
He talked about an acid on the ground, like a liquid acid that burned everything. I was like, was it a fire? Or was it?
Why would
but-
they leave it? That's what I'm wondering.
But
Why
well, no,
would-
but nothing's growing there. The soil looks tampered with. It looks different. You know, it just looks different. Look. And I picked that up from the drone. I never saw it from the ground. I wouldn't notice. But if you look at it from the sky, and that's the crash site, according to Carlos and according to Military X. It all
God damn
started
it! Now
right
they're
here.
gonna go dig it up. They're
Yeah.
listening to the podcast.
So-
they're like, send them in.
So it looks different. I mean, look, man, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. I mean, take a look at that and tell me what you see. Because it looks different. Doesn't it look different
It
all
does
around
look
it?
different.
Yeah.
Totally.
And there could be other explanations, but like, you know, as a layman looking at this first glance, holy shit! I mean,
Yep.
that's wild.
Yeah, it's wild, all right. I mean, that's
So
certainly
you've had
something.
geologists hit you up though.
Well, yes. So I went out to Roswell. I went out to the debris field in Roswell with a geologist. I'll think of his name in a minute. And he said to me, "I'm a geologist. I don't care how well anyone cleans up a mess at a site, an alleged impact site. I don't give a shit how good you think you are. You could be on your hands and knees, back to back, shoulder to shoulder, go through there, bulldoze it, burn it. There's going to be debris left there, period. Look at mounds, moles, areas of runoff from the rain, like things get carried, little bits of metal. Like, I did not scour. I was under a shooting schedule. I really think someone, I've heard people say they want to go to the crash site with metal detectors, with, geologists and see what they can find. So, if someone's willing to put in the time and go there, I think it absolutely should be done. Absolutely. You might need, permission to go on the guy's farm. I don't know. It's, to be out there for months at a time. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure we could figure that out. Someone could pay somebody off. But
Yeah, exactly.
as a side note here, because we had talked about it in the last podcast, but not gone there. What was the thing in the phenomenon that you had the Stanford doctor? He was with Jacques Vallée.
Yeah.
And he was testing the isotopes that I brought up.
Yeah.
What was that from again?
Ubatuba, 1957, South America, Brazil.
And so it was a UFO crash site
It was
allegedly?
an alleged UFO crash.
Or a landing site where they had
crash.
been. It was a crash.
Yeah, it was like an explosion and crash, yeah.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.